The boardroom on the 14th floor of Kim Tech Global had hosted 11 years of quarterly results, 4 hostile acquisition attempts, 2 restructuring announcements, and 1 governance review that had resulted in the suspension of a family board seat held for over a decade. It had never hosted anything like this. Oh Yeon-ji arrived at 8:55 a.m., 5 minutes early, the same margin she had arrived at the Apgujeong Cafe. She wore a structured navy blazer over a white shirt, her hair in the formal chignon she reserved for the public version of herself, small pearl studs. She sat in the corner seat, the independent director's position, the one that faced the door, and placed a single document folder on the table in front of her. She did not open it. She waited. The other board members arrived in their usual order. Kwon Hae-jin nodded at her as she sat. 2 executive directors glanced at the folder. Jae-won arrived last, at 9:01, in the way he always arrived, without apology, without haste, the arrival of a man whose relationship with time is one of mutual respect rather than servitude. He looked at Yeon-ji. She looked back. Something passed between them that was not quite acknowledgement and not quite warning, but contained elements of both. Kwon Hae-jin called the meeting to order at 9:02. "First item on the agenda," she said, and looked at her papers, "is listed as estate matter, pending 30 years. The boardroom went quiet in the specific way of a room full of people who have been briefed on everything except this one thing. Jae-won's hands, flat on the table, did not move. Yeon-ji opened the document folder. Inside, a sealed envelope, aged slightly at the edges. Not the aggressive aging of deliberate neglect, but the gentle patina of something that has been kept carefully and handled occasionally and put back. The address on the front was handwritten in a slightly left-leaning script that Jae-won recognized before his brain had consciously processed it. Not his name. Not his mother's name. "My son's wife, whoever you are." In reviewing the Kim estate documentation during my director onboarding, Yeon-ji said, in the precise language of someone who has prepared this carefully and is delivering it with the care it deserves, "I identified an item in the estate safe inventory, predating the current estate management period. Documented as personal correspondence, Kim Jae-won Sr., to be delivered upon son's marriage." She looked at Jae-won. "The marriage occurred 10 years ago," she said. "The letter was not delivered." The room held the sentence. Jae-won looked at the envelope, his father's handwriting. The same slightly left-leaning script from the books in the study, from the margin annotations, from the single-framed letter his grandfather wrote to his father on the founding day of Kim Tech that hung in the estate entrance hall. He had grown up reading that handwriting. He had not seen it on anything new in 18 years. He did not reach for the envelope. "That," he said quietly, "is not for me." Yeon-ji nodded once. She had already known. "No," she said, "it isn't." 3 kilometers away, in the Mapo apartment, Adaeze Okafor's large suitcase was standing by the front door. Her flight back to Lagos left at 6 p.m. It was currently 9:15 a.m. She was in no hurry. She had packed the previous evening with the efficiency of a woman who has been packing and unpacking her life since she was 31 years old, and has reduced it to an exact science. Everything in its place. Nothing forgotten. The carry-on bag beside the suitcase with her Bible at the top, visible, the way it always traveled. In the kitchen, Adaeze making tea. The boys at the table eating breakfast. Toby had made a list. Not a food list this time. A list of things he wanted his grandmother to know before she left. It had 11 items. He had written it in his best handwriting, which was, he had informed Chi, significantly better than Chi's handwriting despite Chi's claims to the contrary, on a piece of paper from his mathematics workbook, neatly folded into 4. He read it at breakfast. Item 3 was, "You are taller than I expected from the phone." Item 7, "You make jollof rice correctly, which is more than I can say for most people." Item 9, "I am glad you came." Item 11, the last one, written slightly larger than the rest, as if he had decided it required more space. "Come back." Ngozi listened to all 11 items without interrupting. When he finished, she said, "Noted." Chi said nothing. When breakfast was finished, he carried her carry-on bag to the door and placed it beside the suitcase and went back to the kitchen and finished his milk. He did not explain the gesture. It did not require explanation. Adaeze walked her mother to the car that Jae-won had arranged. At the car door, Ngozi turned and looked at her daughter for the specific long moment she used when she was about to say something that required landing space rather than immediate response. "He wrote you a letter, you know," she said. Adaeze said, "What?" "Not Jae-won," her mother said. "His father." She got in the car. The door closed. The car pulled away. Adaeze stood on the pavement outside the Mapo apartment in the December morning cold and watched it go, and felt the specific sensation of someone who has just been handed a thread they do not yet know where leads. Before we go any further, if you have been with this story since part 1, you know how much every single person watching means to this channel. Hit subscribe right now if you haven't already. Tap the button, turn on the bell, and let's finish this story together. Now, let's go. The Songbuk Dong Estate Study. The Pine Trees. The Amber December Light. Jae-won stood in the doorway. His mother was at the desk. He told her what had happened in the boardroom. The folder, the envelope, the address on the front. And he watched her face as he did, because he had learned across the past several months to read it without requiring her to speak. He did not ask if she had known. He could see that she had. "When did he write it?" he said. She was quiet for a moment, the specific quiet of a woman reaching back through 30 years to a room she has not visited in a long time. "The week you were born," she said. "He held you for the first time in the hospital, and he came home that same night, and he wrote it at this desk." She looked at the desk surface, the same desk. "He said he wanted to write it before he forgot what it felt like to hold something completely new. Before the ordinary business of raising you made the feeling unremarkable. He was like that," she said, and her voice was not managed. It was simply a woman speaking about a man she loved before she learned to love strategically. He believed the people who came into this family should know they were wanted, before they earned it, before they proved anything, simply because his son had chosen them. Jae-won looked at her steadily. "Why didn't you deliver it?" She looked at the window, the pine trees his husband had planted, moving in the December wind. "Because delivering it would have required me to believe what he believed," she said. "And I had spent 19 years building a different belief, that this family's future must be earned, protected, managed." A pause that had nothing arranged about it. "I could not deliver a letter that said the opposite of everything I had decided was true. And now," he said. She looked at him directly. "Now I am trying to learn to believe what he believed. At 71. Slowly." She paused. "It is more difficult than it sounds." He said nothing. He understood that this was not an excuse. It was the honest accounting of a woman who has finally stopped confusing those two things. "The letter," he said. "Where is it?" She reached into the desk drawer and placed a sealed envelope between them. She had asked Yeon-ji to return it from the board. She had wanted to deliver it herself. He understood, without her saying it, what that decision had cost her. Not the delivering, the asking. Asking Yeon-ji, the woman she had tried to use. Asking her for this. "I should have done this 10 years ago," she said. "I am doing it now. It is late." She met his eyes. "It is not nothing." He picked up the envelope. He looked at his father's handwriting for a moment. "No," he said. "It is not nothing." That afternoon, 2 letters moved through the city. The first, Jae-won driving the sealed envelope to the Mapo apartment. The second, Adaeze, alone in the kitchen after the boys came home from school and went to do homework, calling Young-ah directly. Young-ah answered on the 3rd ring. "I read your letter," Adaeze said. "Yes," Young-ah said. "You wrote that you were sorry you waited 22 years. "Yes." "You also wrote," Adaeze said carefully, "that you saved the note because you didn't know what else to do with it. That you were afraid." "Yes." "Then you were not waiting," Adaeze said. "You were gathering courage. Those are not the same thing." The line was quiet for a long moment. 22 years of kept things settling into their correct shape. "Thank you," Younga said, her voice thin and genuine and without a single managed layer. "No," Adaeze said. "Thank you." That evening, Jae-won placed the sealed envelope on the kitchen table between them, while the boys did homework and argued about whether a particular mathematics answer could be simultaneously correct and wrong, depending on interpretation, a position Toby was advancing with significant conviction and Chi was dismantling with 3 words at a time. "My father wrote it," Jae-won said, "the week I was born. It was meant to be delivered on our wedding day." Adaeze looked at the envelope. The slightly left-leaning handwriting, the address that had no name, just a description of a person who didn't exist yet. "My mother kept it for 30 years, he said. She was quiet. "It is addressed," he said, "to my son's wife, whoever you are." She looked at it for a long time. Then she picked it up, the weight of paper, and 30 years, and a welcome that had been waiting in an estate safe, while she built a life in Lagos, and London, and Seoul, without knowing it existed. "I'll read it later," she said. "Alone." He nodded. "Okay." Chi looked up from his worksheet. He had been watching with his characteristic, complete attention, filing everything. "Was it a good letter?" he said to his father. "I don't know," Jae-won said honestly. "I haven't read it." Chi considered this, nodded once. "Good," he said. "It wasn't yours to read first." He returned to his worksheet. Toby, who had been listening while pretending not to, looked at the envelope in his mother's hands, and then at his father, and then back at his homework, and said nothing. Which, from Toby, was the loudest possible form of respect. We are almost at the end of this story, and I need you to stay with me for the final 10 minutes because what happens next is the moment this entire series has been building toward. If someone you know needs to watch this, send it to them right now. Subscribe if you're new. And let's finish this. She read it alone. Late. The boys asleep. The apartment quiet, in the specific way of a space that has been full all evening and is now resting. Adaeze at the kitchen table. The place where everything in this story had been decided. With the sealed envelope in front of her, and the green folder beside it, and the worn letter from 7 years ago in the kitchen drawer to her left. She opened the envelope, 2 pages, Korean with occasional English, the slightly left-leaning script, deliberate pen pressure, the handwriting of a man who meant every word and knew it. She read it slowly, all of it. We hear only 3 lines, the ones that matter, the ones she reads twice. "I do not know your name yet. I do not know where you come from or what language you dream in. But I know my son, and if he chose you, then you were worth choosing. That is all this family ever needed to know." She set the letter down on the table. She sat with it for a long time. Not crying, she was not a woman who cried at kitchen tables. But her face, alone and unmanaged, held something that the rest of this series had been building toward without knowing it was building toward it. Not vindication, not relief. Something older and simpler than either. The specific expression of someone receiving a welcome they deserved long before it arrived, and finding, against all reasonable expectation, that it has lost none of its warmth in the 30 years it spent waiting. She placed the letter on top of the green folder, the welcome on top of the signature, the thing that should have come first, arriving last, and being entirely true regardless. 3 weeks later, a Saturday in December. The Itaewon apartment, 3rd floor, small garden below, the specific smell of old wood that Adaeze had filled with flowers, because she has always kept plants, had been reopened for the first time in 10 years. The same apartment where they had lived in the first year of their marriage. The same walls, the same window that looked down at the garden. Different flowers, the same light. 5 people, 6, counting Younga, who had almost declined the invitation and been informed by Toby on a phone call that declining was not an available option, which she had found sufficiently authoritative to comply with. No officiant. They are already legally married, the document signed, the legal machinery complete. This was not a legal ceremony. It was something older and simpler. The acknowledgement, in front of the people who were there through all of it, that what was true is now known to be true. That the knowing changes everything. That some things deserve to be said aloud in a room full of the right people, even when the paperwork is already done. Jae-won spoke first. He did not have notes. "I have been trying to find the right words for weeks," he said, "and I realized the right words were already written, by a man who wrote them at a desk in Songbuk-dong 30 years ago before he knew your name. So I am not going to try to improve on them." He looked at her. "I chose you at 24 years old. I have been choosing you every day since. I intend to keep choosing you on every ordinary Tuesday that remains." Adaeze looked at him for a moment. Then she said, "I kept a photograph of you for 7 years, in a frame between a grammar dictionary and a terracotta figurine, on the shelf where anyone could see it." She paused. "I think that is probably sufficient." Toby said, "Is that it? Can we eat now?" Ngozi said, "Tobena," the full name, the tone. Toby said, "I'm just asking." Chi, who had been standing with his hands folded and his expression carrying the full significance of the occasion, the way Chi carried everything, completely and without announcement, looked at both his parents, then at the room. Then he said quietly, to nobody in particular and to everyone simultaneously, "This is the part that was always supposed to happen." The room held it. Young-ah, standing near the door with her hands clasped and her silver-streaked hair tucked behind her ears, and 22 years of kept things finally and completely set down, reached into her uniform pocket for her handkerchief. Toby watched her. "Young-ah," he said, "are you crying?" "No," she said, with complete dignity. "You are absolutely crying," Toby said. "Leave her alone, Toby," Chi said. Ngozi laughed. The full version, the one Adaeze inherited, the one that comes from somewhere below strategy, and the Itaewon apartment, which had been closed and quiet and waiting for 10 years, filled with it completely. After, food, Ngozi had cooked. The negotiation of whose recipe takes precedence in which dish had been ongoing since Thursday and remained technically unresolved and practically settled in Ngozi's favor because she had arrived first to the kitchen, and possession is 9/10 of culinary law. Young-ah was served for the first time in 22 years of service. She sat in her chair with the specific discomfort of someone receiving something they are not accustomed to receiving, and then made a decision, visible the moment she made it, to accept it, with the same directness she had brought to everything else. Toby told her she needed to try the japchae first. Chi said the jollof rice was the correct starting point. The argument was ongoing, and Young-ah, quietly, tried both simultaneously, and said nothing about which was better, and this was the most diplomatic thing anyone did all evening. After dinner, the garden below the apartment. Small, stone-paved, a single old tree in the corner that Adaeze did not know the name of and had decided to look up and had not yet gotten around to. December cold. The Seoul sky above, clear and black. More stars than the city usually allowed, as if December had negotiated something with the light pollution on their behalf. Jae-won and Adaeze stood in the garden. From the open window above them, Toby's voice, indignant, at significant volume, about something. Chi's reply, 3 words, the economy of someone who has been winning arguments efficiently since infancy. Ngozi's voice, delivering what appeared to be a verdict. Young-ah's laugh, unexpected, full, the laugh of a woman who has put something down and found her hands surprisingly free. They stood close, not touching. The specific proximity of 2 people who have learned each other so completely that touching is a choice rather than a requirement. "Your father's letter," Adaeze said. "Yes. He wrote it the week you were born." "Yes." She looked up at the stars. "He never met me," she said. "Didn't know my name. Didn't know where I came from. No. But he knew," she said, "that whoever I was worth choosing." She was quiet for a moment. "I needed to know that," she said. "I didn't know I needed to know that. But I did." He looked at her. He was right about most things. She turned. Your grandfather's words. Yes, he said. We come from a family of men who say true things. Tell your sons that, she said. I will, he said, on a Tuesday, when it's ordinary enough to last. From above, Toby, louder now, clearly winning or losing something. The distinction was always unclear with Toby. Chi's reply. Ngozi's laugh again. Young Ah's voice, unexpectedly firm, appearing to settle the matter. Adaeze looked up at the open window. The sounds of the people she loved doing the ordinary work of being people together. The specific sound of a life that had been interrupted and was now, simply, continuing. She reached out and took his hand. Not a ceremony, not an announcement. Simply a hand taken in a garden under a December Seoul sky, because it was there, and it was his, and she had decided, finally, completely, on her own terms and in her own time, that it was hers. Come on, she said. Before Toby wins. They went inside. Some stories do not end. They simply find the moment where the extraordinary becomes ordinary enough to continue, without needing anyone to watch. And then they go on. Quietly, privately, on every boring Tuesday. Exactly as they were always supposed to. 5 parts, 1 story. It ends with a hand taken in a garden and the sound of Toby winning an argument upstairs. If this series gave you something, a moment, a line, a scene you replayed, please hit like on this video and every part you watched. Subscribe if you are not already here. This channel is built on stories like this one, and there are more coming. Leave me one comment, just one. Tell me, what will you carry from this story? One moment, one line, one character. I read every single one, and I am already writing the next one. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. That means everything.